Has there been a moment on reflection where you thought, how did I get here? There have been many moments where I've thought about what am I doing here, as well as how did I get here? I moved to Australia 30 plus years ago and fell in love with the sport and had no idea that I would ever have an office at the Richmond Football Club, much less become president. So many times when I reflect on my origins in the United States and the small coal mining towns where I grew up, there's been many times where I've thought, how did you get here? So, but I've never regretted it for a minute. I love Melbourne. How has the game changed me now that I'm finishing up at Richmond? I guess I've learned a lot from the game. I've learned a lot from being president. I think if you aren't learning something from your job every day or so, it's probably a job that you've grown out of. I must say that my time at Richmond has taught me a lot about patience. It's taught me a lot about how great people can be. It taught me a lot about unity and a common endeavor and how good people can do great things. I've been educated in the ways of Melbourne and Australia, and especially had the opportunity to learn so much from our First Nations people, which I really treasure. So I think the game's changed me in ways that I can't even enumerate them all. And sometimes they've become so embedded in who I am, I don't even think about when that change might have happened, because it's the new me, and I think people need to continue to evolve and find the newness in everything that they do. Who's inspired me on my journey? Well, when I reflect on what that journey might be, it's not just through football, but it's on life's journey. I guess I'd have to say, when I think about those sort of pivotal moments, that one of the first would be my parents, who wanted the best for me and my sister from those remote coal mining towns to have an education that they never could have for themselves. And so they sacrificed quite a bit to make me the first in family university graduate and my sister the second. But beyond that, they had the values of volunteerism and the idea that no matter what your station in life, there's always someone who needs your help. And like most, rural towns, there's a lot that depends on you getting things done for yourself. And when your neighbor needs help, you help them. So that idea of self-sufficiency, and that you lean on others when you need them, and you likewise are there to help them when they need you. So I'd have to say my parents to start out. And then I remember one very important conversation that's come back to me a number of times in recent years. And there was a woman who was my scout leader, Girl Scout leader. I was a Girl Scout for a very long time. And I remember I was looking to go to university, and she said, you might think about getting a profession, and then you can always take care of yourself. And at the time, I wasn't really aware that I had reflected on that, but from time to time over the years since, I've thought about that goes to that value of self-sufficiency. And I became a lawyer, and as a lawyer, I've worked in a couple of countries, and I've always thought, no matter what happens, I have a credential that's going to allow me some freedom to do other things I want to do, because I know that I can always find a job and take care of myself. So that economic security was probably very important. And then there are people on a grander scale that I didn't know personally, but I must always think about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the trailblazer she was for the rights of women in the United States, and ultimately a symbol of women's equality all over the world. So her death affected me kind of deeply because of that passing of an era, and knowing how much work went in from where we started to where we went, and the progress that was made was largely due to her wonderful contribution before she even went on the U.S. Supreme Court. So, as an American, has there been a time, and a woman in a game, has there been a time where you felt you didn't belong? And how did you work through it? Well, in starting out as a fan, I never felt there was a time as a woman going to the games that I didn't belong. I think what really impressed me about Australian rules football and going to games was how welcoming, how if you sat with people who had on the same colors as you, you probably went away with a new friend. There were times when being the first woman on the board of Richmond, for example, and the first woman president, when you did feel like an outsider, much less being American and not having gone to school here and not having those kind of networks that people develop, that I felt I didn't belong. But then at Richmond, I've always felt like I belonged as an American and as a woman, because I guess also with football clubs, if you have time to volunteer, there's always a job for you to do. So whenever in other circumstances I might have felt I didn't belong, I just reflected back that I belonged at Richmond. And in most of the roles that I had outside that club, I was there to represent Richmond, and that was really all that mattered. And how did I work through it? Well, I guess a bit of persistence, a bit of I was there to represent my club and to take from whatever meeting I was in information that might make that club better. I don't have inclination to necessarily be angry. I just sort of get on with the job. And I think that over time, you just know what your purpose is, and the purpose is there for the betterment of the football club. And so over time, I just might never have felt like I totally belonged, but I felt like I was doing the job I was meant to do for my football club. Why is diversity important, and have I seen it succeed? Well, diversity is important because the best decision making comes from having many views and perspectives around the table. And I don't mean just the board table, I mean every organization at every level. And when we talk about diversity, it's not women's equality. I always want to emphasize it's an equality thing for women. There is the same number of, or probably a little more women than men in the world. So it isn't about diversity with women. It's about equality for women and diversity of views and diversity of minorities and the underrepresented who should also have a voice and a seat at the table. Have I seen it succeed? I've seen it succeed many, many times. And as many studies have shown, and that companies that have a variety of views around their decision-making tables, whether it's in the executive or whether it's in the boardroom, they have better results. So I think if you really want to be a high-performing, well-organized organization, that diversity is just a foundation stone. What would I tell my 25-year-old self? I would tell that person, you have no idea what's about to happen to you, and that things are just beginning. I remember thinking at 25 that, after this, you're going to be in your late 20s and life might as well be over. And little did I know that life hadn't really even started, and all the great things that have happened to me since that time, and the challenges that come along that create the person that you are. So I've told the 25-year-old self to keep going, to walk through every door that opens for you, and in a few years you'll have no idea that life could be so good. What are your leadership style non-negotiables? I probably would say that respect for others, and hopefully they respect me. I think it's really important that as a leader, I've often said you aren't a leader no matter, even if you might think you are, if nobody's following. And I think that lots of people think a title makes you a leader, and I've never thought that. I think leadership is espousing the values of the organization, living those values, having regard for the people around you is one of the important values for me. I also think that developing around a board table, for example, letting everyone have their say, developing a consensus view, and that unity of decision making, it doesn't mean you all agree, but you come to a view that you can all support, leads to a united voice that is very powerful when times are not going well. So I think leadership style would be, the non-negotiable number one would be respecting others around the table, understanding their views, and trying to pull together a view that ends up being the best decision for the organization. Thank you.